The implications of this draft decision are mammoth because if the vote to overturn Roe v. Wade stands, it pushes the question of abortion back into the political process. As we mentioned earlier, Illinois law would protect abortion rights. But how will lawmakers tackle this thorniest of political issues at the federal level? And what does it mean for the upcoming midterms? Joining us now with more are Congressman Danny Davis, a Democrat from the Austin neighborhood, and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, a Democrat from Evanston. We invited all Illinois Republican Congress members, but none accepted our invite for this evening. We do appreciate you being here. Congresswoman Schakowsky, to summarize this draft opinion, it says that Roe was wrongly decided in 1973, that there is no constitutional right to abortion, and that it's a question that should be left up to the political process. Your reaction?
Well, the vast majority of Americans, over 70%, and that's pretty much all the Democrats and 75% of independents, and the majority of Republicans do not want to see Roe v. Wade, do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. What the Supreme Court is doing is going against the will of the people. We have had Roe v. Wade for over half a century almost, and it has meant that women, you know, I wear a pin that says Roe v. Wade was not the beginning of women having abortions. It was the end of women dying from abortions. And that's exactly what's going to happen if they have their way. Women will die. Besides that, they'll take away our rights, our fundamental, our threshold right of being able to control our own bodies and make our own decision and plan our lives. And they want to put women back into, I don't know, back alleys to have abortions and to treat us as second-class citizens.
Certainly,
I agree with the governor who says, J.B. Pritzker said, hell no, we trust women in Illinois.
Certainly lots of consequences here. Congressman Davis, where are congressional efforts then to codify the right to an abortion? As I understand it, passed the House and it's in the Senate right now.
Well, we're going to be pushing hard to convince the Senate that they need to follow suit. The American people, many of us feel that we've been sucker punched by the Supreme Court, by our Supreme Court making a decision or getting ready to make a decision that we have not lived with for a long time. And I agree with Governor Pritzker, we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. We want women to have every right and every choice to determine their health needs and their health care. That is a God-given right, and no one should take it away.
Congresswoman Schakowsky, is there anything in this draft opinion that leads you to believe that there might be future challenges to states like Illinois that do permit abortion, and that those challenges with a conservative Supreme Court could be successful?
I don't think there's any question that they want to have it as a national prohibition on abortion, not just among states. But you know, they've even gone further. In that opinion, there was a mention of same-sex marriage. I mean, I think these far-right Republicans who don't represent the American people's views would like to undo so many of the rights that people have fought hard for and won in this country. And we're going to organize. I want to tell you, this is going to be a big issue in the upcoming elections. And I really think that women and men that support women are going to be coming out to vote and to say no to this draconian suggestion.
Congressman Davis, back to the effort in the Senate to perhaps pass a law. It seems like it would have to come down to eliminating the filibuster. As it appears right now, there might be 2 Republicans that would support a pro-abortion law. But do you think the Senate will eliminate the filibuster? It sounds today like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin would still not be in favor of that.
Well, you know, we're getting closer and closer. We've never had as much debate in modern times about the filibuster. I think there are not only elected officials, members of Congress, members of the Senate, but I think the American people are beginning and have warmed up to the idea that you do what's necessary. And if eliminating the filibuster is the only way to make it happen, then let's eliminate the filibuster and make it happen and make it real.
Congresswoman Schakowsky mentioned the political ramifications here. Is this, in some sense, a gift for Democrats politically, as they did face an uphill road in the midterms? And as you mentioned, this is an opinion that Democrats seem to share with the majority of people in the country.
I have no doubt that this is going to be a positive for Democrats and for independents to say that these rights are not going to be taken away. And let me say about the filibuster, all we need are a couple more Democratic senators in the United States Senate, and then we can limit or eliminate the filibuster. We will have enough votes. And so I think that Danny's right, that the American people are sick of Republicans stymieing all of our major efforts to help them. I'm talking about people in their lives. So I think this is going to be a real turning point, and that they're going to be sorry. If I were a Republican right now, I'd be very worried, because people do not like this policy of eliminating Roe v. Wade.
Congressman Davis, I want to shift gears a bit. One of your colleagues, Republican Adam Kinzinger, introduced a bill that would authorize military action in Ukraine if Russia uses biological or chemical weapons. Is that something you and your colleagues would support?
You know, we're hoping that Russia will exercise a bit of sanity and will not go there, will not do that, will not push us up against the wall where there's no other alternative. So we're hoping, I'm hoping, that we don't get to that point. There will be a level of sanity that will come to Mr. Putin and Russia, and we won't get to this barbaric action of using biological warfare and introducing our world to disaster.
But Congresswoman Schakowsky, if Russia does cross that unthinkable red line, or seemingly unthinkable red line, would you be prepared to support Congressman Kinzinger's bill that would authorize military action?
Look, you know, this is not going well for Vladimir Putin at all, in any way. This war has been a disaster. And there are definitely behind the scenes negotiations for some sort of a resolution of this. You know, he threatens all kinds of things, including, unfortunately, the use of nuclear weapons. Yes, he has his thumb on the button. But we are hoping that those absolutely those huge war crimes are not going to happen. And I agree with Danny that, you know, we would rather try and find an exit ramp with Vladimir Putin to just stop the carnage that we're seeing there. And you saw that the president was in Kyiv, and now Nancy Pelosi was there. We're doing everything we can to help. The president asked for another $33 billion. I'm sure that we'll be willing to give that. So you know, we're moving along, but I don't want to pre-guess what Putin is doing. In the meantime, I'm hoping that diplomacy is going to convince him, as well as his poor performance.
All right, a lot on Congress's plate right now, and our thanks to Congressman Danny Davis and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky for joining us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.